Welcome to Evening Rounds, a podcast that takes you behind the scenes in medicine. Tonight, we'll be chatting with Michael DeVera about music playlists, team players, and life-giving donors that make transplant surgery possible. If you like what you hear tonight, please subscribe. Mike, I want to thank you for joining us tonight on Evening Rounds. I know your time is very valuable, and I appreciate you spending some of it with us.
Thank you for having me.
A transplant surgeon is a pretty impressive job. We all have jobs in our life, but transplant surgeons, it's pretty cool. And we're going to ask you several questions about that. But there's one question I really want to hear from you, the answer. And that is, if you were to say, what are the top three 1980 hair bands, what would they be? And the reason why I ask that is I know you are a DJ and actually had a business and all of this, because I have what I think are the top three bands, but I'm not the expert. So I think the top three bands are Def Leppard, Motley Crue, and Bon Jovi, but I actually wanted to hear from you as the expert.
Sure. That wasn't necessarily our genre, because I grew up in the Philippines.
Okay,
and,
so tell me what the top three songs are of the 80s for you.
Yeah, your genre.
Oh, well, for me, Borderline, Madonna, that was one. A song by Tears for Fears, and honestly, I can't remember the name. It's in my head. And then there's a song by a band called Industry, not well known. State of the Nation is the song. So those are three kind of songs that come to my mind.
I've heard tell that you have the best playlist in the OR. Is that true?
And that's what they say. Right.
And it's a mixture of 80s and 90s?
No, it's actually just contemporary, mainly pop, rap, and alternative, just Apple Music.
Nice.
And whatever fancies me, I just add it.
So what you want when a surgeon is doing their magic, you want their mind to be where it needs to be.
I want a Tribe Called Quest playing.
And music is a universal language, right?
Yeah.
That's the beauty of music. And so you can learn a lot about someone by the music they listen to. And so when you walk through the OR, to hear what is needed to put the surgeon where they need to be to perform the best is pretty fascinating.
Right. No, and I think everyone in the OR knows. So when it's my case, nobody plays their music. So
no one would dare.
It's Dr. DeVera's music, right?
Right. So I have a couple of playlists that I, kind of rotate. And it depends, too, on what the case is, because my longest playlist has over 1,500 songs. And it's funny, it goes over time. So it's when I first came here, I slowly built that list.
You have like a history through music of your time here.
And one of the scrub nurses, she's been with us for a long time. So, she knows that history.
That's fascinating.
And she'll say at some point during a transplant, oh, yes, this song, we should be at the bile duct, and this is our closing music.
Wow. So you have actual closing music.
Well, it just turns, yes. Because just the timing, and or she should say, oh, we should be closing by now. And we're
a little delayed.
Yeah.
So I think that segues very nicely. I mean, as a transplant surgeon, for the people that are not in the medical field, can you walk us through a little bit of that? Because you often think about putting the organ in the person, but you also fly all over the place taking the organs out as well.
Sure. I think that's one of the things that made me interested in the field. Of course, why do patients need a transplant, right? Well, they have end organ damage, end organ disease. And as a transplant surgeon, we're trained to do abdominal transplants, liver, kidneys, and pancreas. Intestine is part of our training. The heart and lung transplants are done by cardiothoracic surgeons, so different specialty. And I do mainly liver transplants. That's been my love, my passion. But I also do kidney transplants. So when a patient needs a kidney or liver or pancreas, then again, their organ is damaged to the point where the only chance for better life, so to speak, is with a transplant. And so the process is, you identify the need for an organ. So are they eligible to be placed on the list? And if they are, then there's a waiting time. And when it's their turn, then yes, transplant surgeons will go somewhere and, of course, someone has passed, and either that person or the family is kind enough to donate, that person's organs. And, a donor can save up to eight lives. And
How do they save up to 8 lives?
Yeah.
well, so 2 kidneys, an intestine, the pancreas, the heart, the lungs, the liver. 7. Sorry.
Wow.
So
And then sometimes the lenses of the eyes, is that right too?
sure.
Or-
And of course, that doesn't, we're not even talking about corneas and skin and bones and heart valves.
Wow.
So yeah, and those non-tissues save even more lives, right?
I know in the case of the liver, obviously, it means someone has passed. What does that feel like to kind of be a part of, one life leaving and giving another life over?
That's what makes transplantation special. So from the donor side, a lot of donor organizations now do what's called an honor walk. When a donor goes to the operating room, right, the hallway is lined by the nurses, staff, and family. Just to not to celebrate, but also because everyone recognizes, I guess, the sacredness of what they're going to do. They're going to donate organs to save someone's life, and it obviously gives special meaning, right? Hopefully to the family. And that's a common theme. On the recipient side, almost always one of the first things that recipients or their families will say is, say something about the donor, like thanking the donor. How do we get in touch with the donor family?
Yeah.
Right. So
Yeah, it's a little different, but I personally am kind of in that journey right now. My son needs a bone marrow transplant. And when you think about what it takes to voluntarily donate, and I know you have a lot of kidney patients who are family members who are saying, I want to donate. You think about the incredible immensity of that gift.
yes. Right.
And changing that person's whole life. It's unbelievable to think about that. Have you seen some really beautiful patient stories and patient outcomes come from some of those gifts?
Oh yeah, I'm almost every day, and sometimes we kind of take it, or I take it for granted, like what we do, But yes, so you're talking about living donation. So instead of deceased donors, right? So someone who's alive will donate part of their liver or part of their kidneys. So here at Loma Linda, we do living donor kidney transplants, but hopefully next year we'll be starting our living donor liver transplant program. But yes, we're daily witnesses to heroes stepping up and to miracles happening, literally.
Yeah. Mike probably won't say this about himself, so I will. You've been an extraordinary visionary leader here on campus. You took a program that was very small, but you recognized the potential. And I think it's worthwhile talking a bit about, obviously it's a huge team. You're a leader of that team. And Loma Linda is not just on the map for transplant. I mean, it is one of the transplant leaders here in the state of California. And I think that should be recognized. And I'd like to hear a little bit about that journey and your vision for that program.
Sure. I've been here since 2010, so it's been 14 years. We were talking earlier about how time flies. And before that, I was at the University of Pittsburgh. And, at the time, Herb Ruckel was running the program as an interim director. And, they were looking for, a more permanent director. And I have Southern California roots. My family is here. And so is my wife's family. So we've always wanted to come home eventually. And it was just the right time. A position was open, and honestly, when I was at Pittsburgh, which a long time ago, and maybe in some ways still now, is the mecca of transplantation, because that's where Dr. Starzl, the father of transplantation, practiced for many, many years. It was really busy. And so when my thought was, okay, I'll go to Loma Linda and kind of just take it easy, because transplants, it's an intense field. And I think for the most part, transplant surgeons are very intense folks.
I hope so.
What are you alluding to?
So anyway, so I just wanted to kind of take it easy here and we had a good team here. But I remember, and so we started to grow. And I remember in 2016 or 2017, we had done maybe 60 liver transplants, up from about 20 a year. And Dr. Hadley, who was the dean at the time, said, "Oh, Mike, we're going to be doing over 100 livers." And in my mind, I just laughed. No way, And so here we are in 2024, and yes, the program has grown tremendously, and our liver and kidney and pancreas volumes are up. The first thing I would say is the team. Like you said, I'm lucky enough to be, the leader of the team. But if you don't have good people, nothing works. So if someone asked me, well, what's the success of the program due to? Or, of course, there's many different reasons. Again, timing and luck, but it's the people. And, Kelsey, Randy, we were lucky enough to have him for 2 years a long time ago as part of the team. But
do you know, I tell everyone there's two people who are instrumental in the fact that I'm at Loma Linda, and you are one of those two people.
Cool.
Because you, Dr. De Vera, took a chance on a kid right out of PA school. And then we went to San Diego and thought that's where our destiny was. And then you called up and said, "Hey, it's still open. Will you come back?" So I am so grateful that you were able to really show my husband specifically what that team looks like.
I didn't know that. That's awesome.
Yeah, he's carried that on to the new specialty he's at.
Well, if he wants to come back, there's always a spot for
Look.
No, that's awesome.
Yeah.
I'm interested in the journey. So you don't just wake up one day and you become a transplant surgeon.
Right.
I'd like to, in your mind, growing up, was being a physician always in the cards? And then when did you say, okay, now I'm a physician, I want to be a transplant surgeon? And I really want to hear your story.
I think I was brainwashed by my parents.
Well, that works.
So 3 kids, brother, sister, and I'm the youngest. We grew up in Manila. There were no physicians in the family, both my mom's side and my dad's side. So I think they wanted a physician in the family. So I think I remember ever since I was young, I could already hear, "Oh, you're going to be a doctor." So I've always liked the sciences, and I kind of knew I wasn't good at talking, so law was out. I wasn't really good at math, so engineering was out. My dad's was a mechanical engineer. My mom was a dietitian. And so really, to me, it seemed natural, because I like sciences, that I'd go into, medicine. And then college, and so then we moved here to the States.
So after high school?
After high school. And my dad had already had plans. He had heard about the UCR, UCLA Biomedical Sciences program, which is no longer around because UCR has its own med school. But every year that program based on UCR had 24 to 28 slots at UCLA. And it is intense. You start out with 500 or so freshmen.
500 for potentially 22 slots?
Yes, and it's a biomedical sciences major.
And are you kind of just looking around at these other people?
Yeah, but these are your friends too.
Yeah.
Because you spend a lot of time with them, obviously.
Yeah, yes.
Because it's intense, I'm sure.
Right. So, the first a couple of years. And this is a kid coming from, going high school or school in Manila and not knowing the U.S. system. And
wow, it's a big change on steroids for you.
Yeah.
I mean.
So it was literally just, my head on the books for couple of years. And then, you luckily made it through. And so now you go to residency, and I was lucky enough to stay here in California. I was in Northern California, UC Davis. East Bay is where I did my training.
But when did you know you wanted to be a surgeon?
Oh, yeah. So there's another short story about that. I kind of always did things with my hands, built model planes. And so I
you kind
really,
of had that engineer thing too.
Yeah,
like
I kind of knew I was leaning towards surgery, and it also had that appeal somehow in me as a kid to do general surgery. And this is despite one of my mentors, Julie Freischlag, who eventually became the first female chair of general surgery at Hopkins, and among other things. And then she became the dean of the med school at UC Davis. But anyway, at that time, vascular surgeon, young, she said to a group of kids, surgery, it's like Q&A, and surgery stole my youth. Imagine this is like, it's saying this to a bunch of kids who are thinking of...
It's like an interest group, a surgery interest group.
Right. But I get just being honest. But that really stuck in my head, even up to now. I remember her saying that. But I still went to do surgery.
Why did it stick with you so much, do you think? Do you feel like it stole your youth?
Because I think kids who go to, or who pick general surgery as a career, I mean, they know it's a little bit more, harder, intense. Right? Intense, involves more time, perhaps, versus other specialties. So even back then, and also back then, we didn't have the 80-hour work week.
No.
So surgery. And then lastly, I was a fourth year, and I was thinking of, well, what am I going to do? Should I just go into general surgery or subspecialize? And I did our transplant rotation, and I just fell in love with the field.
Why?
By far, my attending surgeons or attendings at the time, technically, they were more superior compared to my other attendings. And so I wanted to be like that.
Unofficial mentors have a huge impact in your training. I remember it vividly. This is your life. I mean, when you go in through residency and this is your life. You're spending every waking moment almost, it's robbing your youth to some extent. You're spending every waking moment doing this. And if you're post-call, you're working on research projects. It is your identity to some extent, particularly in years ago. So then you look at those individuals who are doing amazing, and this is all you're thinking about. And you're like, well, I want to be that guy.
Yeah.
I remember my mentors from med school, residency, transplant. And so today I also strive to be a mentor to...
You want the resident to say, I want to be like Dr. Dejera.
That's exactly what I was thinking, right? Is you must live that now every day.
Not to take the Nike quote, but I want to be like Mike.
Yeah.
No, it's funny. When one of the residents come and they say, I'm kind of interested in transplant, we, at least for me personally, I kind of feel guilty about maybe trying to encourage kids to go into transplant.
Why?
No, because it just takes a lot.
Yeah. Like mentally?
Mentally, physically, and time-wise.
Yeah.
And actually, that's one reason why not too many residents want to go into transplant, because they see how hard we work.
It's 2 a.m. The transplant doesn't wait.
Yeah,
right?
That's just such a you kind of mentioned that before, like the 80-hour work week, quote unquote, because whenever that organ is available, you're on a plane, right? Yes. So you're kind of always at work.
Yeah, but one thing we've learned and we've all heard about is burnout.
Yeah.
And so there is a balance, or there needs to be a balance, right? And I'm still struggling with that to some extent.
Yeah, because I would imagine that just the drive that you've had to have all the way up until now, if you get a call that you can save someone's life, that's got to be hard to step away from.
Yeah.
Maybe going back to that stealing of youth comment earlier, does it feel like there are some of those years for you as well? And how do you kind of protect your wholeness now?
Yeah, yes, missed. Although we kind of had our daughter late. So at that point, I just really made it a point not to miss too many things. But of course, there were still those missed parties and all those things. No, I think as you get older and as you do this longer, you realize that there's other important things just to keep your sanity as well. Yeah. And you just have to make a point to prioritize things.
And I think building the team, right? So I hope we're in a place where, I can't speak for how you do it with transplant surgery, but when we're taking heart attack call and, my son at age 7 would be in a choir concert that, he's been practicing for, and it's from 6 to 8. I'll have a colleague cover me from 5:30 to 8.
That's neat.
And no questions asked. The same thing from, that's a team, right? We're all in this together. Then it becomes, you're able to do those sorts of things. I don't know if that's how you guys do things or not.
We certainly do. We cover each other.
That's neat.
Right.
And it's never, and you're in a team when it's never, well, I've done it for 2 times and you've only done it one. I mean, there's a season in life, right? The season in life is different at different times for different folks. Right. I remember my mentor here on campus, Dr. Jutsi, he was one that recruited me here. His kids were older. They were already out of the house when my kids were doing all their things. And so I know without question that he covered way more for me than I covered for him.
Right.
And it's just a season. And now the responsibilities are different, right? You cover more. So but when you're in the right place, people aren't keeping score. And it's just like, no, of course, man, this is important. You need to be there.
Right.
So that's good to hear, that approach. I think there's some very interesting things that I still want to hear from you. There's a lot to unpack here. There is one question I wanted to hear your perspective on, and there's some controversy in the literature, and I'm not going to get into the science of it all. But I do know that there are ways that we can increase the donor pool by selecting candidates when they are terminal, right? And I wanted to hear a little bit about the machine and how we can perfuse the organs and so forth to allow transplantation to save more lives.
Sure. So as a background, roughly 100,000 patients waiting for organs. Again, heart, lungs, liver, pancreas, kidneys. And last year was a record, and actually we've been lucky at the U.S. that every year the number of organ transplants have been increasing. I think the number was about 37,000 transplants last year. So there's a gap there. And so, and that's always been the problem with transplant. And that's why people die while waiting for organs. And so there's always been a push to utilize more donor organs because there's no question a lot of organs are unfortunately discarded for many different reasons. And so there are these new technologies, relatively new, that have been, that have come so that we can utilize more organs. And you mentioned machine perfusion. Actually, not a new thing, kind of. It's been experimented on for many years. But so today, there are machine perfusion devices for hearts, lungs, livers, and kidneys. And again, what that's allowed is for us to utilize more organs, but which we would otherwise discard, because now you're putting them on a pump. You're circulating either blood or cold solution and kind of reinvigorating the organs. So
it's a wonderful thing to be able to drop that number of 63,000 waiting at the end of every year from to less than that. Yeah. So I recently updated my driver's license. It had expired, and I still remember looking at that box. And I checked it when I was 16, and I'm 49 now, and I checked it again, and I have the pink sticker on my license to be an organ donor. And this time, for some reason, maybe because I'm a little older or things like this, it actually hit me a little bit. I have kids and all this, but I would love for you to get your opinion on the value of becoming an organ donor.
Well, earlier we talked about the gap between those who need transplants, right? About 100,000 patients on the wait list versus the number of transplants that are done every year, about roughly 37,000 a year. And that is the number one problem with organ transplantation today. And so thank you for Anthony for being an organ donor, and I am as well.
Me too.
Right?
Awesome. Good job, Kelsey.
I'm glad everyone hears us.
I just always see that bumper sticker, right? Heaven doesn't need your organs or something, so leave them behind. You know, there's such a bumper sticker. But yeah, if we just have more donors, then we would obviously save more lives. But there's a lot of considerations when people, you know, decide that they either will or will not be organ donors, and that's a big topic. You know, cultural issues and distrust and all those things. But yeah, we need more organ donors.
So, Mike, thanks again for joining us this evening on our podcast. Evening Rounds was intentionally chosen as our title for this, as I think it's very impactful for physicians. We all know what morning rounds are like, and we know what evening rounds are like. And I'd like to hear from you. When you hear the term evening rounds, what does it mean to you?
So as surgeons or clinicians, like you said, we all do morning rounds, but we also do evening rounds, and that's to check on patients and see how they did during the day, and also make plans for the following day, you know. But also, I think now that you asked that question, in life, I think it's also important to, at the end of the day, perhaps reflect on what happened. I don't do it all the time, but you know, just think about how your day was, and actually, I do ask you know, when I get home, right? You ask, how was your day, and hopefully, you know, improve on whatever things that you're working on.
Mm-hmm. I think that's an important part of life, is to reflect. We go, but sometimes to reflect upon where you've been to help you know where to go, I think is very useful. I love that answer. And again, thank you very much for being here tonight.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
A special thanks to the sponsor of Evening Rounds, La Loma, who has provided banking services to the Loma Linda community since 1955. Their support helps us continue bringing you episodes focused on health, story, and mission.